CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Today, we are going to learn about something that I find fascinating. It's called Mingo Smart Factory. And the reason I'm interested in that is it does, in fact, relate to CMMS, maintenance management, manufacturing, really production. And we've got Bryan Sapot, and he is going to tell us all about his journey. We're going to get into all these things. Bryan, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.
It's, and you and I already talked it was a while back, chopped it up a little bit because I wanted to understand, where I could find some value for this industry that we all seem to really love and care about, and we want to make a difference. All these things are connected, maintenance management in and of itself, all the condition monitoring, all the things like predictive maintenance, all of it is just so we can keep moving forward, keep quality high on products, better safety. All these things are connected. So this is why I thought it would be great to do an episode, and I appreciate you doing it. So I'd like to first jump into your background and kind of what led up to the formation, the launching of Mingo Smart Factory. And, there's really no rules, just, tell it how you want to tell it. And then we'll kind of jump into some other questions.
Yeah. So I've always been, kind of a technology person, and I fell into doing, programming, and I started a company, like a custom software company that built ERP systems for manufacturing companies. And it's something that I just kind of stepped in as a 23-year-old. I don't know. This is how careers start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I owned that consulting company for 18 years, and we implemented ERPs for like mid-market manufacturers. And the thing that I noticed that there was always a lot of finger pointing, right? So like and manufacturing is really hard. Like every day is different, but the production team says maintenance doesn't know how to maintain the equipment. Maintenance says they don't, production doesn't know how to run the stuff. And then everybody thinks engineering didn't design it right or spec it right. Like everybody's pointing fingers. And usually in the manufacturing world, the loudest voice is going to win, right? And I wanted to create a system that helped folks make decisions based on data versus yelling, screaming, finger pointing, gut feel, right? And that's really what we tried to do with Mingo. And I guess, like you said, it's mostly focused on production, but because we do all this monitoring with sensors and things like that, it has a lot of applicability to maintenance management as well, right? In the maintenance department.
Yeah. And I had some notes, and, I try not to do too much in the way of like overly crafted things, but some of the stuff that I was interested in that we had already talked about was, number one, the solutions designed to really focus in on things like you've got the production monitoring, reduced downtime, real-time visibility into all these different data points and what's actually happening. Of course, we want to get rid of things like Excel if we're at that point where we can outgrow that and really move towards process optimization within our orgs, on the plant floor, et cetera. And all these analytics. I wanted to ask you, I'm going to switch it up a little bit on OEE recently, because I know that's another factor that you want to kind of leverage that. And that's a metric that, as far as I know, I'm not the expert that you might be, or like I saw a post from 4.0 Solutions, and OEE is often criticized. And I think that's because OEE needs a tremendous amount of context as to how and why you're leveraging that as a KPI. And if it's not quite right, it would then be ineffective or maybe misapplied. Do you see that? And can you speak to that at all when it comes to OEE?
Yeah, I mean, OEE, context is really important. So if, lines can run at different speeds for different products, right? So like if I'm putting, things like chocolates in a tray, for example, it's probably going to take longer to put 24 chocolates in a tray than it does to put 6, right? or maybe I can do them in parallel. Therefore, I can get more finished goods out the back end of the line. And so you have to your OEE calculations. I think this is maybe kind of obvious, but they need to take into account like what product am I running, maybe even how many people there are on the line, and then how the line is set up. So like that context really matters. And what I guess what's interesting about the context and talking about maintenance is that's what matters on the maintenance side too, right? Because let's say, like with sensors, you can look at things like pressure, speed, like all temperature, humidity, like all of these different things that you're going to look at from a condition monitoring perspective. But what normal is may depend on what you're running on the
Yeah.
production side, right? Vibration profiles, like if like a very simplistic example, if you have a machine tool that can cut wood, glass, and titanium, it will vibrate differently based on if you're cutting wood, glass, or titanium, right? And what's normal and what's not will be different based on that product. And that's kind of like where I think this whole thing comes together is, not only can you do condition monitoring, but you also have the context of, okay, like what are we doing when these things are going on to know whether or not it's normal or if we need to fix something, right?
Yeah. And also, is it making the impact? In other words, gaining us the desired outcome, the outcome that we're shooting for. And I think for me, when we look at all these technologies, and you obviously with your technology are trying to essentially put it all together, not necessarily be everything to everyone, not trying to be or replace a CMMS, the maintenance management solution. In fact, we talked about how you can augment those environments and leverage the data from a CMMS or even get data into a CMMS. So it's all kind of back to this whole original process. So now we move away from OEE because I wanted to just get your insight, because for me, I might know a bit about what it is, how it works, and a lot of these things. I'm kind of a generalist, and I want to draw from your knowledge, your experience, the times you've walked plant floors and worked with teams, because that will be helpful to a lot of the people that listen. A lot of practitioners, like they really know this stuff. So I always want to defer to my experts. So switching to that, when it comes to the overall maintenance management, you already talked about how that's impactful to what you're really trying to do. It's part of the equation. And you've got the condition monitoring. I want to switch it up to predictive maintenance, how your solution, the things that you see as it relates to teams that are ready for this kind of technology that can leverage it well, not use it as a magic button, but how does Mingo Smart Factory actually help teams predict? How does it drive actual predictive maintenance?
Yeah. So the way we do it, there's a lot of things out there that can do different things, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of tools out there that can do different things, especially on like really expensive asset intensive equipment that do some pretty amazing stuff. In the manufacturing world, what we've done is we mostly focus on like a check engine light idea, like what's normal, right? Figure that out. And then if it goes outside of normal based on, the context, like what you're running and that kind of stuff, then alert somebody. And it's not to the level of, like we've done some work in utilities where, like on a turbine, like some of these companies with a vibration sensor can tell you bearing number 6 is going bad and you need to replace it in the next 3 months, right?
Yeah.
We can't do that level of analysis, but it can say, like, hey, the motor that runs this conveyor is vibrating strangely, right? It's outside of the norm. The temperature is really high, which probably means it's going to die pretty soon. So you should probably go look at that, right?
Yeah.
And that's the level of predictive that we do. And where that intersects, I think, obviously with the maintenance management systems is when we detect that, we can push, a work order request or a work order over into the maintenance management system so that, it goes into a queue and it gets assigned to somebody and they go look at it.
Yeah. The and what you're talking about there, like for me and a lot of the people I've talked to, and we've all heard these stories where you've got a maintenance management system as part of your overall tech stack, and we want to set up things like preventive maintenance, and then we want to track our demand or corrective responses.
Mhm.
Unplanned failure, whatever you want to call it. And there's different ways to set those schedules up. And it's always seemed to me that people shouldn't look at this as a magic silver bullet. This is going to solve all your problems, hit it and forget it. It's more like, I keep going back to this augmenting. It's going to help you. It's going to give you the clues, and it's going to tell you, hey, you should, if you can, stop, have somebody go and take a look at this before it gets any worse. So in that regard is where it's more predictive. But what I like about it is sometimes, we'll go in and we'll build out all of our PM schedules manually based on intervals, based on
Yeah.
time, based on maybe you have some functionality in a CMMS, regardless of what it is, that can trigger based on cycle counts or hours, meter reads, things of that nature. But this sounds to me like it adds just another way to take a harder look. Do you think there are still to this day a lot of manufacturing environments that over leverage technology? In other words, they're actually not that type of organization with that level of maintenance maturity to leverage technology like this? Like, is it possible to say that there's certain companies this would not be for?
My knee jerk reaction is to say no. Like, I think you just have to keep it simple, right? Like you
Mm.
kind of alluded to it there. Like you can overcomplicate these things, but if you just keep it simple, you can drive a lot of value, like what's the critical parts of, our process, and just throw some sensors on there to see, how they're running, baseline it, and then figure out what normal is. And if it goes out of the norm, it's not very expensive. I mean, hell, you don't even need our software to do it. A lot of the sensor manufacturers can do that stuff
Yeah.
too. And the other part of it, like I think you hit it, is you could do the PMs based on conditions, like based on cycles. So like we could count cycles, push them over there. So then you're doing it on the number of cycles versus time, calendar time. Same thing with run hours, and it can prevent you from prematurely doing maintenance, right? And incurring downtime that you didn't have to, because maybe the machine only ran 50% of the time, over this 3 month or 6 month period. I think that you know this intuitively, but there could be a lot of money savings there, and also revenue generation, because you got to run so much longer to produce more product.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Because what happens in all these areas is everyone's so concerned about getting we have to know the ROI with what we're about to do. And I understand that. But one of the big concepts and themes that is constantly talked about, all areas of technology within manufacturing or facilities or other types of environments, is how do we tie these maintenance activities to the business in such a way that it matters for revenue, so that when somebody is looking at a balance sheet and they don't have that visibility, oftentimes by design, I mean, who has time, right? Everybody's moving
Mm-hmm.
so fast, and they go, oh, that's a really big expense, let's get rid of that. And then they don't realize the trickle down effect. And my bringing up that maintenance maturity and trying to kind of, I I wanted to just try to circle in on, or focus in on this idea that some organizations can get as dialed in as they're ever going to be, and they might not know it, they should not go any further. There's even, like in the case of reliability, there are many examples of organizations, environments that should not leverage a pure reliability program because it wouldn't make sense. They might have different types of assets that wouldn't necessarily benefit from that. Maybe on a, kind of like a macro, a little bit type of a thing. And I always like to talk about these things that people are thinking about, but they might not know how to articulate, or they might not be aware of it once they get into these engagements. I like the idea of people getting software that bangs the cash register without losing quality of product. And
Mm-hmm.
I, I'd love to see the highest levels of safety. Does the solution have, I think it had a safety component to it as well? Or
Yeah, you
is it
can.
more?
It's
Okay.
Yeah, you can kind of build it with this. We have tools to be able to build forms, so you can report safety incidents and stuff like that. It's not like a pure safety system,
Right.
though.
Right.
Yeah. What
Go ahead.
what's interesting, just to go off what you said before. What's interesting is what we see, like tying the OEE and maintenance discussion together. What we see with some of our customers is that they foster this culture of green is good, and that actually comes from our scoreboard. So you can color code, all the different metrics on a scoreboard and show them out on a floor. And what we've seen a lot of our customers do is display the OEE components on a big TV out on the floor for a line, so availability, quality, and performance. And then different groups have different responsibilities for those numbers. So the availability number is basically maintenance, a little bit of engineering, but mostly maintenance. Performance is the production team, and then quality is, it depends, but quality, right? And these companies have kind of tied the maintenance activities into that availability number and getting it and staying in green, right? And if we stay in the green, therefore we save this much money, we can produce this much more product, which means this much more revenue. And we've seen a lot of folks drive, I've seen this as a best practice in a lot of different manufacturing companies where they divvy it up and assign it out, and they drive tons of improvement that way because when you drop into the yellow or the red, somebody's getting notified on their phone to get over there and get this thing back up into the green. And then if you're using a maintenance system to track all these corrective actions that you're doing, hopefully you're going back to look at that to say, wow, this, whatever thing keeps happening all of the time. Let's put some time into that to fix it. Right.
Yeah.
And it really kind of round trips this whole thing and makes it, makes the dollars like real. Right.
That that's again, for you to pick that up and explain that, because I think we chatted about that a little bit as well, like this idea that you've got this. It's almost like a whiteboard, but it's not. It's a virtual, it's a digital board, and you can see what's meaningful, what's impactful, meaning hey, we just slipped up a little bit, we can respond a little bit quicker. I think another thing is when these technologies are leveraged in these environments, you mentioned something about, hopefully people are keeping an eye on that when it comes to the data from the maintenance system itself, because an unfortunate common practice is that they don't, they can't, they won't, because of certain behaviors. They're too busy. Maybe they still have too much break fix going on, and they're excessively reactive, and they can't go back and start to understand their data within the maintenance management system. And I don't know what the solution is other than continuing to talk about it, continuing to encourage organizations, maintenance teams, leadership, and everybody in between to stay a bit more connected. Leaders, get on the shop floor sometimes, get out there and have some conversations, just take it all in. Because then next week when someone says, hey, we were looking at, maybe your solution or something else, or we saw a problem that we really need to fix, we need some money for that, there's a better awareness. And I don't know what I'm really getting at there other than technology is great when you leverage it right. Technology is actually pretty good when you leverage it wrong, but very dangerous. And there's still a common practice of kind of sleeping on it. It's like we get it and then we forget it. And do you ever see that with just the current kind of environment out there? Is this still as common a problem as I think it is?
It is on the manufacturing side for sure. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it is on the maintenance side. Like you see the technology is good. But it's like you said, it doesn't solve problems on its own. Not yet, at least. So you have to change the behavior inside of, the organization to make it work. Like what are like we always try to be part of the daily meeting cadences initially to figure out what's being talked about, at the daily production meeting. Is it the stand-ups out on the floor when you do the shift handoffs? What kind of information are you looking for so that we can help you use the information you're collecting from Mingo in those meetings and then help drive improvement based on that? Because if you look at it every day and you're analyzing it every day, it doesn't have to be a lot of time. You'll start to notice patterns or be able to see that in the data and then start to go after it and fix it. But if you just let it sit, like you said, and look at it once a week, you're not going to see these trends and patterns. And most of the systems, actually all the systems, I don't know if I found one yet that does this, they won't tell you the answer. Like it's not going to say like, look, you had a really shitty week last week and here's why. right? It's because of these downtimes on these lines and this crap was going on and you didn't know about it. They're not doing that yet. Maybe they will. So a person still has to dig through it and have the discipline to look at it, and then basically assign the work out to the folks to fix the problems, right? Prioritize it.
Yeah, and I wish the systems could do, I want to say, a better job of that, but I'm not saying that it's not the system's fault that it's not better. It changes environment by environment, the context, the people, the existing versus the preferred behaviors, the materials, the temperature outside impact. It all changes constantly. So it's really hard for somebody to make a solution that's going to do that. They could do it for
Yeah.
an environment, but as soon as we go to this next company, oh, we got to start tweaking that. So cookie cutter won't work there. And I think that's one of the challenges. I also think, like, this idea, like, where you guys come in and try to stay with them on that ride, at least initially, so that you can help them kind of see what they might not be seeing, but they could see. Do you do that from a customer success perspective, an account management perspective, or is it any and all players within the organization, your organization, that get involved in that?
We so like after somebody goes live with the software, we run this playbook for a couple months that helps them develop those habits. Like
Hmm.
we're not, like you said, every environment's different, and they're the experts in their environment. So we're not trying to tell them what changes to make. We're just identifying like, hey, here's some weird stuff going on in your data, things you ought to look at. Maybe if they don't have regular meeting cadences in the company, we'll encourage that, give sample agendas on what they should look like. So we try to handhold that process after go live, because developing a data driven organization is kind of hard. It doesn't matter what organization it is. You could be a software company like we are, and it's hard. Like, what's this telling me? And a lot of times you can draw all kinds of different conclusions from it, but you need to be taught that, and that change is hard. So that's why we try to like handhold people through that process to get it ingrained into the day to day. And that's really when you see the success. Like we have this one customer. They're big. They're big tier one automotive supplier. I don't want to give away details, but
Of course.
because I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it publicly. But they they went from like mid 60s in OEE to like 96% in 18 months. And
That's
I was like, how'd you do this? Right. And because that's like astronomical. And it's a really well run organization. It's a Japanese owned company. So, they have this lean culture in there already. And they said that it is the source of truth for all manufacturing data on the floor, right? And they share it with everybody in the organization. It is used in all the different meetings, whether it's engineering meeting, maintenance meeting, production meeting, the cross department meeting too, that happens every day. And they're looking at what went wrong yesterday. Is it a persistent problem? Prioritizing, like we talked about before, where are the places we need to focus on, and then assigning those tasks out, and people go do it, and then they make the fixes, they monitor it, and just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And they started from, hey, let's knock off any downtime over 30 minutes, and then they went down to 20, 15, 10, and now they're into the sub 10-minute downtime range. And quality issues and all of these other things, but it's just like that iterative process of using this information every single day. And I don't think, even with all the stuff that's coming, has come with ChatGPT and AI and where it's coming in the future, I think that's still like the special sauce of humans to be able to look at this and solve those problems, right? So it's like, how do you develop that whole process in an organization and make it stick? That's really
yeah.
where the success comes from.
I mean, you've hit on so many things. You're saying things that remind me of this pinnacle that we're all, in a lot of environments searching for: continuous process improvement, which is where you've learned, adapted, improved so much that basically on the daily, and some scenarios could be, it might be a stretch to say minute by minute, but like literally day by day, what can we do to get, this idea 1% better?
Yep.
Because they're at that point, especially if you reference, like these environments in Japan, they make an improvement. They are, in a sense, so intentional, they will make another improvement, and they won't do it just to do it. they will understand it. And when they understand it and they know this made this improvement, they won't question it. They'll ingrain it. And it's just fascinating to me because it's so challenging. You won't eliminate the humans in that process anytime soon because I don't know, just because I don't want to spin out on that because everybody talks about AI and this and that. And I'm one of those guys that's like a bunch of hogwash. 92.3% of it is total BS. And why would you say that? This is your industry. And it's like, no, what I mean is it's just surface level stuff. It's buzzy, it's buzzwords. And what I like is substance and stories like the one you just told, where this is what's possible and it has actually been done. We can't tell you exactly who, but these are the things people need to hear. And they need to keep asking themselves, how can we do that? And don't give up on asking that and answering that question for yourself. I mean, that's what I think organizations should be doing. And I know it's not an easy ask because it's disruptive. Do you find when someone brings in your technology or anything else you've seen over these years, because you've seen a lot of this, that the biggest challenge is developing the right kind of a case built upon the right team, the right culture? In other words, do too many companies try to leverage technology when they haven't done the people and the process work first?
I flip flop on that one. I don't know, because if you have, let's say the people side is a bit of a mess and the processes are a bit of a mess, just a bit. You're middle of the road, a little bit better maybe, and you bring in a really strong like ops leader. I think that organization, it would work, right? Because you could, starting simple, keep it simple, don't go crazy, but you could leverage technology to help drive improvement through the whole organization, right? You could help, you could help with performance management on the people side. You could help better understand, how some of the manufacturing processes are actually running, and you could use that data to improve it. Because I think in that environment where you have those issues, kind of like we were talking about at the top of the podcast, you have a lot of finger pointing, you have a lot of decisions made on gut feel and tribal knowledge, which may or may not be good, right? Finger pointing is bad, but the other two things may or may not be good. And I think you could use facts to start to turn that ship around. But you have to have a strong person. Like if it's a let's say it's a CEO that's looking at technology and he or she thinks it's going to fix all of their people and process problems, and they don't have a strong leader that's really going to drive that implementation and make it work, they're going to fail. So to me, I think it's that strong leader that really matters. We've worked with a lot of companies that are like, we want to get it right on paper first before we go to technology. And it's like, yeah, I don't need to ride a horse before I learn to drive a car. Like I don't
I
know.
like the I like that you said you kind of flip flop on it, and here's why I like it. It's not just because I always say I like what people say. That I feel that way too, and I often, a lot of the people that we all know, like in common or just industry as a whole, get your people and your process right, and then you can really thrive with technology and layer that on top and throughout. However, I've seen so many scenarios, like in my past life in the CMMS world, the technology was necessary for the culture and the process to be a bit more well defined, so that people could then kind of have a roadmap. And the reason I'm careful not to always talk about that, yeah, get the technology because it is going to help you change that. I don't want people thinking that the technology is a magic silver bullet. And that's where it's kind of it's a little bit of an ebb and a flow or something like that as to how technology can actually kind of help or boost the cultural, people and process kind of a thing. Like if you're blind, you're blind. And I like this thing you said about, well, we want to get it right on paper first. A lot of times you can't do that, and many things in business and in life don't work that way. The textbook might be awesome. The lectures were great. We had all kinds of hot discussions and did presentations in school and all this stuff. But get out there in the real world, I don't know, maybe half that shit ain't even going to apply. And I'm not saying
Right.
that to be negative. I'm saying everything in theory is in theory. Everything in concept is getting us a little bit closer. And now we have to prove that out. And you can only do that when it's in action.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes adding in this technology can level that other part up. But we have to be careful with that too, right? Would we agree on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because it could, the technology could actually simplify things, right? But I mean, a very straightforward example is an accounting system. You wouldn't run a business based on just a ledger in a book when there's an accounting system. QuickBooks is available to you, and it's really easy to use, and it makes your life a lot easier than trying to run it on a ledger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it has to be simple. So, like if you're going from spreadsheets and sticky notes to manage, maintenance, you don't want to go to like Maximo. No offense, Maximo, but you need the step in between, right? And then the technology makes it easier, and then you can focus on all the other processes and stuff that needs to go around it to be successful, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
When your 22-year-old kid is interested in learning how to be a pilot, and they show up day one, and and it's a freaking rocket ship. I mean, forget about it. You don't. It's
yeah,
well, you say you talk about Maximo in particular, and I mean for me personally, it's a monstrosity, and I think it's like. I mean, it was great. It was great when you said it. I almost fell out of my chair because you're so right. We won't stay on that. What I'd like to do is switch you into what we call the fun question segment,
all
or
right.
we call, me, myself, and I. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's so that people can get to know you. We get a moment of levity, and we might learn a little something that's not related to the technology at all or your experiences in business, but in life. So, number one, I don't know if that even makes sense. What's your favorite music?
The Grateful Dead.
All right, cool. Number two, what is your favorite sport or hobby? And if it's a sport, you don't have to play it. It could be one you like to watch.
I'm kind of split. So like I live in the middle of nowhere in Montana. So summertime it's out on my bike. So gravel, mountain, road, whatever. I just want to ride. And then in the winter it's skiing.
Nice.
So those are my hardcore pastimes. I used to love football. Used to love football. Used to live in St. Louis. We had the St. Louis Rams for a while. Before that we had the Cardinals. I had season tickets. My dad had them to the Cardinals. I had them to the Rams. But then they left and now the NFL can go, you know what? So I used to love
I hear
football.
you.
So good.
Yeah. No, it's I've had at least one guest previously that essentially said the same thing, and I suspect it was for the same reason.
Yeah.
So, um, this is the big one. Probably my favorite question to ask. What is your perspective or opinion or approach, anything at all, when it comes to the concept of work-life balance?
It's all life. There's no difference. I mean, I might be a rare case because I've been an entrepreneur since I was 23. Like I've owned my own businesses, so I had no choice. I have my phone with me all the time. Way back in the day, I used to have satellite phones if I was going in the middle of nowhere. So it's just life, right? Um, I definitely don't go, crazy. I don't work 12 hours a day all the time. I definitely carve out time to ski, ride, whatever keeps me sane.
Yeah, yeah, and that it's always a fun question for me because you can get myriad answers. None of them are wrong. And
No,
I think it's, I mean, sure, somebody might say, yeah, that's wrong. I don't agree with that. That's fine. I want you thinking. And when we drop this, if you don't like that, drop in a comment. Don't mention anybody's names. Don't call us out too hard, but you can say, yeah, I don't believe in that work-life balance stuff either, or whatever. I love that kind of stuff. It's kind of unanswerable and it's fun stuff. So,
what's your
ev-
answer to that question?
oh man, I think for me, I think it changes daily because I don't think I've ever been able to achieve anything that looks like or feels like work life balance, work life integration. And in some ways, I think that's problematic. I've done a lot of things, entrepreneurial or otherwise, that are kind of all over the place. And I don't overly systematize it, even though I was in technology and I understand some of those things. It changes. So I don't know if work-life balance is a thing. I think my ideas behind it are, you have to work, you need to work, you want to work, because if you don't work, that's kind of dangerous. And then you have other things that aren't work, but these are all part of your life. In other words, don't neglect any of the things in your life. Work needs to be done. When there's work to be done, it's got to be done. And you can have more capacity by just accepting that fact. Now, if you want to set rules, hey, after 6, don't bug me. I'll get to you at 6 in the morning, because when I'm with the wife and the kids or whatever, that's it. But if the sky's falling, blow me up. Yeah. That way I know. I mean, what are you going to do? We're so connected. You just got to go. But I also like the idea of people incorporating downtime on purpose. So instead of scheduling everything around the personal time, schedule the personal time and kind of take care of yourself. So I'm trying not to answer. I'm trying to not answer. And that's my perspective on work-life balance. That's the reality for me. Yeah. But I love the way almost everybody does it. And I'll be like, man, I could never do that. I love that works for them. That's why I like that question. So I hope my answer was good enough. I might edit that out, man. I don't want anybody knowing me that well. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Bryan, this has been really fun. I enjoy learning about technology, people that have, been out there throughout this industry. And it doesn't always have to be CMMS. It can be CMMS related. We've got maintenance management in there. I thank you for that time. I want people to be able to find you. So on LinkedIn, everyone, it's Bryan, Bryan Sapot, Sapot. So search for him, connect with him there. And if he goes to you, just hit me up and, we'll work it out. No, just kidding. The other thing is Mingo Smart Factory, which I kind of got turned on to that because I wanted to learn more about it, because I'm learning about these other things like unified namespace and, stuff that like 4.0 Solutions is talking about. I had Zach Scriven on, and, I know a little bit, Walker Reynolds. So check them out. It's Mingo Smart Factory, Mingo Smart Factory, all smushed together.com, and you can learn about that. Again, Bryan, thanks for being with me here on CMMS Radio.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Enjoyed it.
Me too. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.